Hello everyone and welcome to this video where we're going to be going through the top 10 worst spawns in Territorial IO. So let's jump straight into it. Starting us off as the 10th worst spawn in Territorial IO, we have the Galápagos Islands. As a part of Ecuador, known for its biodiversity, many people think of Darwin when they think of the Galapagos. It's a terrible place to start. There's no reason why you would start here as opposed to South America. You're just going to be eating red interest, you're just going to be burning time to get to the mainland, and if you do get to the mainland with most games, you're just going to be taken out. In 9th place, we have French Southern and Antarctic land. Specifically, we are referring to the Kerguelen Islands, or the Islands of Desperation, which are a French overseas territory located in the sub-Antarctic. I don't think many people live here. It's one of the most isolated places on Earth, and it is not a good place to spawn. Many people who play Territorial IO frequently know that these islands are a really important pivot point if you're starting in Southern Africa, Australia, or Antarctica. Just to move through these zones is kind of have a better outpost. And the main issue with them as a spawn is you're just so far away from everything. Your best bet is likely to head to Antarctica if no one's there. You can also try to head to Madagascar or the two islands to the east of it, which I believe are Reunion and Mauritius. But generally speaking, this is a terrible spawn, which is why it makes our top 10. As the 8th worst spawn in Territorial IO, we have Cape Verde, or Cabo Verde, for all the Portuguese speakers out there. As an island nation in West Africa, Cape Verde is an excellent pivot point or launching point if you're moving between Africa and South America. But as a spawn, it's just kind of crap. There's no really reason why you would spawn here as opposed to a West Africa spawn. You're just going to be a little bit behind. It doesn't take that long to get to the mainland, but the issue is you're always going to run into someone. You're just going to be behind, and you probably can figure what will happen. In 7th place, we have the Andreanof Islands. So this island is part of the Aleutian Island chain, which forms part of Alaska. The reason why this spawn is so terrible is because you're just far away from any substantial piece of land. You can kind of island hop, which makes it a little bit more viable, but the kind of issue you're going to run into in most games is that someone is always spawning in North America. The lack of territory paired with the time it takes to get to the land and the fact that you're going to run into someone in North America is why the Andreanof Islands are the 7th worst spawn in Territorial IO. In 6th place, we have South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands. This is a British overseas territory in the Atlantic, and it is pretty far away from other stuff. While it's a little more isolated and maybe it can give you an advantage over some of the other spawns, especially if no one's in this kind of southwestern part of Antarctica, generally speaking, it's a really bad spawn. The kind of issues you're seeing as these spawns get worse and worse is you're farther and farther away from land, and you're dealing with more red interest at the start of the game, which just puts you further behind. If you want to play the spawn, you clearly need to go for this part of Antarctica. You gotta hope no one else is there, and maybe, just maybe, you can be alright. But you already see you've wasted most of your red interest just getting to the land, and you're gonna be really far behind. Now, before we get into our top 5, I'm first gonna give you a few honorable mentions that just missed out on the list. The first honorable mention is the Auckland Islands. So these are a group of islands that form part of New Zealand and are a little bit to the south of the mainland. The reason why this was an honorable mention and not included in the list is that I feel that if you can get New Zealand, you can take advantage a little bit of the early game interest. The kind of challenges with this are that, one, you're starting off with 2 pixels, so you're already going to be behind and hitting red interest when you're getting there. And the other complication is if a bot spawns in New Zealand, you're likely going to have issues in most games. If that happens, this spawn might be in the top 5. There's a lot of different contextual elements to what gets picked, but in this version of the list, I'm giving it an honorable mention as one of the worst spawns in Territorial IO. The next honorable mention are the Canary Islands. So these are a group of islands that form part of Spain and are just off the coast of Morocco. It's not a smart spawn. There's no reason why you would spawn here as opposed to West Africa. It's a little bit better than Cape Verde or Cabo Verde just because you're a little bit closer. You get to the mainland sooner. I think you have a slightly bigger island. I'm not sure if that's Gran Canaria, but generally speaking, it's a crap spawn. It's one of the worst in the game. I would spawn here, but it just missed out on the list. The last honorable mention goes to Vanuatu. So this is a South Pacific country that's made up of a bunch of islands. And the reason it's not on the list is that I think some of these kind of small islands around Papua New Guinea, Philippines, Indonesia, they have a little bit of an advantage in that you can kind of jump to different places. It's evidently really bad, and you can make a case for it being on the list, but overall, it is one of the worst spawns in Territorial IO. So all this said, let's jump on to our top 5. For our 5th worst spawn in Territorial IO, we have Jan Mayen, which is a part of Norway and a volcanic island in the Arctic. It is an absolute garbage spawn because you're spawning with 1 pixel, which already limits your interest. There's nothing really super close, so you're always going to be dealing with tons of red interest and losing out on that potential. And you're also close to Europe where all the crazy people spawn. You can try to go to Iceland, you can try to go to Greenland, you can try to hide in Svalbard, but this is generally just going to be a disaster, which is why it makes the top 5. For our 4th worst spawn, we have the Azores, which is an autonomous region of Portugal in the middle of the Atlantic. Kind of like Cape Verde and the Canary Islands, you just have no really reason to spawn here and you're just further away from Africa, which is probably your best plan. You're spawning off with like a few pixels, you're dealing with red interest, you're in the middle of everything, and the Azores is often a pivot point. So you have no potential, you have no options, and when you get to the mainland, you'll probably be killed by bots, which is why it's an absolute disaster of a spawn. And the 3rd worst spawn in Territorial IO are the aptly named Rat Islands. So these islands are one of the closest points to Russia, one of the furthest points out in Alaska and kind of the Aleutian Island chains. If you go and look on Google Maps, you might find one island closer to Russia than this one. The main issue with this spawn is that you're far away from everything. You're dealing with the same issues with red interest, and you're close to Asia, which is effectively the best spawn in the game and meta for every single world game. By the time you get to mainland Russia, you're already going to be having problems. If you try to go hide in Japan, there's probably someone already there. You also don't have the troops to try to make it down south to like Papua New Guinea, the Philippines, and all these other island spaces, which is why this is the 3rd worst spawn in Territorial IO, in my opinion. And as our runner-up for the worst spawn in Territorial IO, we have Guam, which is a territory of the United States located in the Pacific. It's known for its naval bases, and it's a really good pivot point if you're starting in Australia or Asia and you're trying to think about moving between those 2 zones. Guam is terrible because it's so far away from everything. You could say that there's potential advantages from being close to the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, and those kind of island areas, but it takes so long to get there that you're already incredibly far behind. As a fun fact, on prior versions of the game, Guam was impossible. You didn't have enough troops to get to the mainland. I can say on very easy difficulty, it is possible to beat. I'm not sure about easy, but all these type of factors is why it is the 2nd worst spawn in Territorial IO. And the worst spawn in Territorial IO is French Polynesia. French Polynesia is an overseas French collectivity, and if you look at the Territorial IO map, it is in the middle of nowhere. It takes over a minute to get to the Galápagos, which if you recall was the 10th worst spawn on this list. Contextually, French Polynesia used to not be possible, but with the recent update, you can barely get to the Galápagos if you send out all your troops. The other thing you should know is that even playing on very easy difficulty, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I think it might be incredibly complicated to even win the game, having tried multiple times. I also did a test with just seeing how far ahead people get in multiplayer with the time it takes to get to the Galápagos. And what you can see is just a bunch of random players have almost 1,000 times the troops as I do, which is why French Polynesia is hands down the worst spawn in Territorial IO. So thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one.